Hello and welcome to the Agenda on Politics Social. I'm Graham Hughes and I'm joined, as always, on this show by Phil Moorhouse of A Different Bias fame. How's it going, Phil?
All right, they've changed the icon for the mute button on YouTube for some reason.
Oh, wow. Oh, dear.
That might change.
Oh, dear. Well, some people like change, and that's why they're voting for reform, because voting for the aristocracy has always caused such huge changes in our society.
Working a treat in America.
Yeah, the rich are just getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. Change. I suppose it is change, isn't it? I mean, if you're poor and you vote to make yourself poorer, then...
Well, this is what I'm trying to say to people. People voting for change. The change we have on offer, we are a liberal democracy, so the change that people therefore want is an illiberal dictatorship.
Yeah, exactly.
They're wanting to vote for people who don't approve of democracy, don't approve of workers' rights, don't approve of public services, and don't approve of anyone that's not them.
But it is fascinating seeing these people in America being interviewed saying, "I didn't think he was going to take away Medicare and Medicaid."
Yeah,
and it's like
when he bellyached about it for years.
All he did when he was in his first term was go on about how much he wants to repeal Obamacare, which is the Affordable Care Act that allowed these people to get Medicare and Medicaid.
Yeah.
And then they voted to take it away from themselves. And then, I don't know, some people have... How do you feel about that, Phil? Because I don't have much sympathy for them. I'm just like...
I don't, but I do have sympathy for there's other people in their position that didn't vote for it, or specifically voted against it.
Yeah, I've got sympathy for them.
Yeah,
people who voted for it,
people should think
about it now. I mean,
people should think carefully about the vote and the practical impact of their vote, which is exactly what happened in Caerphilly yesterday.
Well, let's talk about this because Labour seem to be in free fall at the moment, judging from the polls and also from this by-election.
Yeah,
Labour the by-election they got 11%. 11%.
There's three things that factored in there, four things really, but three main things. The first is, the fact that Labour nationally don't have any sort of narrative. They have no control of the narrative. So when people, it's like when you ask people what have the Labour government, because they don't know about all the legislation, they don't know about everything else going through on the budget. What they know about is, if they know anything at all, it's either nothing or a winter fuel allowance or disability cuts and the unpopular stuff, right? Now there's but that is the here and now. We're not going to go off on a tangent and say how it's going to change in a few years, but that is the here and now. So that obviously hurts the Labour brand across Britain, inevitably. Yes. But there are two other things to factor in. The first is that we know that elections around the world that have been taking place in the last couple of years, incumbents have been mostly, not exclusively, but almost exclusively losing because of the cost of living crisis, which actually is in evidence in countries around the world as well, because of that post-COVID and Ukraine war inflation surge.
Yes.
In Wales, Labour are the incumbents.
Yes.
Labour have been in power for basically decades.
Yes.
And in a cost of living crisis. So that hurts them as well. That is a particular factor there. And then the other one is that although we can talk about, Labour's comms being absolutely appalling, Welsh Labour's are also really bad. So if you think about Welsh Labour specifically, and I'm not even talking about that little sketch that you threw up on the WhatsApp thing yesterday. I mean, that was pretty bad. But you've got to think, first of all, Gething, their last leader, was involved in a dodgy donation scandal. I mean, that's not a good look for your party. The other thing is, they've been spending this campaign, like if you take Plaid Cymru, for example, Run Up Youth, he's been talking about doing various things in terms of more public spending, right? Now, I'll tell you what's interesting about that. He's not changing the spending pattern. He's just got more spending. You think, well, how's he paying for it? I'll come to that in a moment.
Well, I'll show I've just put the picture up that Phil's referring to.
But the point is,
designer is on leave.
What Plaid Cymru were doing with their campaign was saying, again, it comes down to this positivity image. They were going, we're going to do this and we're going to do this and we're going to do this. What were Welsh Labour doing? They were going, we're going to stop these libraries being closed down, which first of all is like, okay, so you're talking about treading water. Plaid are talking about making things better. But then people asked, like, hang on a minute, who's closing these libraries down? It's Labour councils. So their entire campaign was a complete shit show. Welsh Labour ran a really bad campaign.
Yes.
And that's so you've got
lost the narrative. They ran a bad campaign. They've got shit comms. I want to make
this
the
is
case
specifically
that
Welsh Labour as well as
Labour,
National Labour.
Yeah, Labour in Wales and nationally. I think they're politically incompetent. I don't think they know what they're doing, Phil.
Well, they don't know what they're doing politically now. They are politically incompetent.
Okay, well, we agree. Let's end the show there then. That was quick. Oh no, hang on. We got a super chat we'll have to address.
But what I am going to say, I'll still come back to Welsh Labour.
Super chat first. Come back to Welsh Labour in a moment. £5 super chat from Miss Paula Thomas. They were conned into thinking the Affordable Care Act would abolish Medicare. Think they're throwing the granny off the cliff ad. But yeah, it didn't. It expanded Medicare to loads more people, but they want to get rid of it because the Republicans brand it as Obamacare, and anything that's got Obama's name on it in any way, they want to destroy. Hence the East Wing of the White House being absolutely demolished this week. Anyway, sorry, Phil, what are you going to say about Welsh Labour?
So in terms of a couple of things about Welsh Labour, they have got a couple of things that are sort of out of their control that aren't the case more nationally. The first is they are the incumbents. In a cost of living crisis situation, you are going to suffer as the incumbent. The second thing to point out is they've actually got a much tougher job now because, so I come back to Apurth and what he said about the extra spending that Plaid are promising. And you think, well, because that's the answer, isn't it? Where's it coming from? If you're going to talk about extra spending, you're either talking about boosting spending in one place but cutting it in another, or raising more taxes. Wales don't have quite the same scope as the Scottish Parliament to do that. So he was asked, how are you going to pay for it? And he just said, well, the Welsh Parliament's getting more money over the next few years. So he's not cutting anything. He's just saying what he's going to do with the extra money the Welsh Parliament's going to be getting. And you think to yourself, where's that money coming from? It's coming from the fact that last year, Rachel Reeves massively boosted public spending, which means by the Barnett formulas, that Wales and Scotland get extra money in proportion.
Yes.
So he's taking advantage of Labour's budget in a way that Welsh Labour didn't.
That's what I'll do.
Just mad.
Yeah. But Welsh Labour should be taking advantage of that, but they're closing down libraries. Like, honestly, Phil, I mean, Labour collapsed. There's no two ways about it. People turned up. This wasn't a case of, only 30% turnout. This was over 50% turnout.
No, but that was the other interesting thing.
For the Assembly. It's the highest ever turnout in Caerphilly.
But I'll tell you what's really good news about it. You're saying as if it's doom and gloom for Labour. It's actually very good news for Labour. Obviously not in Caerphilly. But they'd lost it anyway. The polling had Reform UK winning fairly comfortably just 2 weeks ago, right? Now, there's nothing wrong. Survation did the polling. They're not bad pollsters by no means. I always say, like, YouGov and Ipsos are the best, but Survation they do it properly. And they had Reform UK winning comfortably. In the end, Plaid won comfortably. Now, the reason for that, and the Plaid leader himself said, right, the reason for that was because what happens in an election, right? If you only poll 2 weeks out, you never see this. Because what happens is, as you get close to polling day, a lot of voters who are practical with their vote start to think about the consequence of that vote. So at a certain point, when the polls have told you that this is very clearly, there's no question about it, this is very clearly between Plaid and Reform UK, what happened is the reason the turnout was just over 50%, which was the same as it was for the actual proper election a few years ago. This is a by-election, shouldn't have been that high, right? Yeah. Was not expected to be that high. So you had a late surge of people turning out to vote, and you had the Labour and the Greens dropped even more votes from that poll to Plaid. Why? Because even as the Plaid have acknowledged, people have voted, yes, they've voted for Plaid over Labour, but they've also voted to stop Reform UK.
Yes.
So the same thing and that's consistent with polling, because in a system, okay, technically Wales is going to have PR election at the next thing, but this was like a first past the post election because it's for one seat. So in a first past the post situation, you can be leading the polls but still lose if there are more people who are willing to vote against you than for you. Because that's what happened in Caerphilly yesterday. Yes, Reform UK were going to win that. that Labour were going to lose either way, they were gone, right? But Reform were going to win that seat.
Yeah.
And that would have been crushing, by the way, for Labour. So Labour voters who voted Plaid yesterday made it for two really good reasons. First, you've got to tactically vote. But secondly, Labour have a budget to pass. Welsh Labour have a budget, because they're still in power in Wales, technically. But they're in the government. They've got a budget to pass. They've got a long history of working with Plaid, because they're basically, the difference between them basically is that Plaid want Welsh independence and Labour don't.
Yeah.
In all other respects, you won't find much between them on other policy areas. But so they can work together. Reform would have tried to block that budget so that Welsh Labour couldn't actually implement a budget, which would have meant even more cuts, because they wouldn't. It's like literally the US government shutdown situation. And that would have completely screwed the situation. Yeah. So it was a really important one. It's not even one of those things where you just have to prioritise, and from a Labour point of view, if you're in Caerphilly, a Labour voter, well, Labour can't win, so who's the best option? No. This actually gives Welsh Labour a fighting chance of actually passing a budget. So it was actually a really important election. And because it was it wasn't, because you describe it as a by-election, it wasn't just a by-election. A by-election doesn't change anything. This did. This changes the balance of power for passing the Welsh budget, right? Because there still has to be one passed before the Senedd elections. And so in an important election, what I'm saying is a load of people turned out to block Reform UK. And there's every reason to suppose the same thing will happen in the general election. When people see it as important, and people in those last few days of an election start to think about who they actually want in power, polling suggests that, first of all, Labour will be in a better place polling-wise come the next election, because the stuff they're failing to communicate will suddenly be there in concrete. But also, the polling tells us there are more people strongly disapprove of Reform UK than approve of them. And in a first-past-the-post situation, that means you've got the potential for tactical voting against Reform UK.
Well, yeah,
as long as people know who it's
voting
between.
than people realising that their lives are now better than they were 5 years ago. People don't remember 5 years ago, Phil.
No, they do. That's why people have elections. Governments have been losing elections all over the world. They do. They don't remember necessarily 10 years ago, but they do remember over the last few years.
So why did they re-elect Trump in America?
They didn't. They kicked him out. Then their standard of living got worse under Biden.
Yeah.
Yes. No, their standard of living got worse under Biden, and then they voted.
Well, actually,
they voted the Democrats out.
The actor he brought in, he put loads more money into the economy. He puts loads more money into jobs.
They didn't see that.
The green wave of jobs. Also,
I don't care.
The economy was doing better than it was under Trump.
No, but the economy, according to these people, is the price of eggs. That is why, if you see Labour at the moment, one thing they're getting right...
Why are British people any different?
No, because they're not. This is where you're getting it wrong, and actually Rachel Reeves is getting it right.
Tell me why Rachel Reeves is getting it right in a moment, because I've got a £5 super chat from Josh. Thank you. Do you think the Greens will pull Labour to the left like Reform pulled everyone to the right?
No, because Reform didn't pull everyone to the right.
I don't think it will just be the Greens. I think there's a lot of factors that should pull Labour to the left.
I can go over that in a moment. Go on,
tell us why Rachel Reeves is right.
So, because she, at the moment, could be boasting about the fact that we've had the longest sustained period of growth, right, for years, which is true. She could point to the fact that we've got the highest business confidence in Lloyd's surveys since 2015. She can talk about the fact that for the first time in God knows how many years, incomes are going up in real terms. There's lots of things she can point out on that economy graph. She's not doing. Why? Because and she said it herself, Starmer said it himself, they keep saying it, they understand that what matters is how people feel the economy, and they've also said they feel it in prices, right? Yep. So they know that people aren't going to think that Labour are managing the economy well until they see prices coming down. Yep. So they are aware that as far as anyone's concerned, the economy is not how much money they're getting, it's not how many jobs are being created, it's none of those things, it's not GDP, they don't even know what GDP is, right? It's the price of their groceries. Their income could go up by £100 a month. Yep. In real, like after taxes, they could get £100 a month extra. If their grocery bills goes up by, or if all of their bills collectively goes up by £50, they won't feel better off. Because what they know is, and this is what has been proven in various countries, not just America, People do not sit down with a spreadsheet of their finances and work out if they're better off or not.
Yes.
They look at prices, and Labour know that, which is why they're going to make sure prices are down. They can't make sure food prices are down, but they can make sure the big things like energy prices are down, which is what they could be doing. That's what they will be doing.
And when it comes to Labour being pulled to the left, I was going to say that I don't think that it's just going to be, Zach Bansky and the Greens that are going to.
It's not going to work at all. The people.
Hang on, let me just finish. I want to say, I think there's going to be a lot of factors in it. Labour at the moment are seeming to try and go after the refuck vote that they've lost in the north, and I think that's on a road to nowhere. I think those votes are gone. I think it's very, very unlikely that any of the, it's not like over 50% of voters in these areas have all gone to reform, or like even a lot of Labour voters have necessarily gone to reform. It's a smaller proportion than the ones that Labour have lost to the Greens, to the Lib Dems, to other parties. Plaid Cymru, as we saw last night.
Graham.
Anyway, so where do you stand on this?
That is completely 100% factually wrong, what you've just said.
Factually wrong, okay.
Factually wrong. Let me explain,
okay,
right? Man. So first of all, when they talk about pulling to the left, Labour are already very much to the left. When people say pulling to the left, they don't mean to the left. They mean liberally social, right? Labour have massively.
Are you going to do me on a technicality here? Because
no, I'm not going to do your definition of left, which
is different from everybody else's definition in the world.
No. That's just the first part. You can argue about it if you like. That what you've said is also completely wrong about the way the votes have moved. What I'm trying to explain to you is, how can you pull them to the left when they've already gone quite far to the left, right? In terms of social policies, here's the key factor. So when people say that Reform UK, should we say Reform UK influenced the Conservatives to try and adopt more of their positions? What I would say is this: look what happened to the Conservatives.
Yes.
They're dead and buried. They may actually not be a party in 10 years' time.
Yeah, they got 2% of the vote.
Why would Labour want to do what the Tories did? Why would they want to go, oh, let's do what the Tories did and lose? But then there's the other thing that you've got completely wrong about the number of votes from Labour to Reform UK being really small. It's not. It's actually huge. Reform UK are Labour's big, in terms of the key voters, right? In terms of those key swing voters in the seats you can win, but you're not guaranteed to win. Labour are in competition with Reform UK. It's not a small number at all. It's a massive number, right? They are not in that much competition with the Greens. Where the Greens are making their gains, it's from the voters who had already abandoned Labour.
Interesting to see in this election last night then, where people went from Labour, because they lost 35 points.
They went to they went to Plaid.
All of them went to Plaid.
And a load of them went to Reform UK.
Okay, well, what's your point then? You said that it's refuck that are the real threat.
Yeah, they are the real threat.
Particular constituency.
But,
I would say
in Wales,
Plaid took more
Wales, you've got two Labour parties. You've got a nationalist Labour Party and Labour itself. Plaid, what's the difference? Give me an example of a policy that Plaid have that's other than Independence for Wales, that's different to Labour. One
moment before we come to that. Chris C, thank you very much for the £5 super chat. The quickest way to bring down energy prices is to decouple them from the price of gas. There's no mention of that happening anytime soon. You've covered this before.
Because you need to get rid of gas.
We need to get it out.
Which they are doing in the next few years.
Well, they might be backpedaling on that.
No, they're not. They've just been announced. And I know that although the energy stuff, the clean energy stuff is not going to be one of the three big things for Downing Street itself, they're not backpedaling on it. In fact, they've just been announcing the hundreds of thousands of new jobs being created from it, specifically this week.
Well, back to sort of the left and right thing. I mean, when we say being pulled to the left, I know you've only got so many characters that you can put into a comment when you're writing these things. So, we use that as shorthand. And although, Phil, you only use left and right for economic reasons.
That's because that's what it means.
Yeah, I know technically that's what it means. But for the vast majority of human beings,
so
left and right has also means social progress on the left, and conservatism, keeping things the same or making it worse for working people, on the right.
But the point is, what you're missing is the people who matter in a first past the post system are the key swing voters. Those key swing voters are more socially illiberal, and Labour are fighting with Reform UK, not the Green Party.
Okay.
The Green Party will hive some votes off them.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you're looking at a seat you won, right? You're looking at a seat you won and you want to win it again, and 20% of your vote's gone to Reform UK and 5's gone to the Green Party. You're not going to pay attention to the Green Party. No, you're not going to enjoy losing that 5%. I
said that the Greens are one part of it, but like I wouldn't. If Labour had a massive shift to the progressive, can we say use progressive? I guess progressive side rather than conservative side, right? Of the economic, the social spectrum, right? Whatever you want to call it, social grid, whatever, right? If they do that in the next couple of months, I'm not going to say, I mean, obviously Zach Belansky would be like, hey, that was the Greens that did that, but I think there's a lot of factors that go into it. The big one for me is that at the moment, Labour are parroting lines from Reefuck, demonising immigrants, using language like illegals. They are putting out adverts saying they're going to stop the boats and all this kind of stuff.
Show me.
They've used the word illegals to talk about immigrants.
Show me.
I'm not going to be able to find it right now.
Because they haven't done it. I know for a fact they haven't done that. They have been actually scrupulous in avoiding doing that. When they've used the term illegal immigration, when they've used... No, what did he
say that?
What did he say it?
He said we risk turning into a nation of strangers.
Exactly.
Sounds a bit Enoch Powley to me.
Yeah, but it wasn't to anyone else. You only knew that because you then went and listened to that speech, right? That Enoch Powell speech. It was before either of us were born, right? So although we know the sentiment of the Enoch Powell thing, why is my thing gone? It seems to have frozen. Are we all right? We're still there?
Yeah.
All right, okay. What he meant by that was he didn't want us to be caught. And he's apologised for the phraseology because in all honesty, you could have written, in the context he gave it, he was literally saying, we want us all to be united. That's what he was saying. He was arguing against divisive rhetoric in that speech. People picked on that phrase because it was similar to one used by Enoch Powell that the person who wrote that speech for Stan will have had no idea about because that was generations ago. Right? They've apologised for it because they didn't realise it was echoing that. But the sentiment wasn't anything to do with Enoch Powell at all. And in terms of the illegal immigrants, Labour have scrupulously avoided using the term other than to literally mean someone who's come into the country genuinely illegally, as in they've breached visa conditions or they've actually snuck themselves in without a visa and without claiming asylum. Because remember, not everyone who comes into the country via... So when they're referring to people who come across, the Channel to claim asylum, they refer to those as irregular migrants. That's the term for them, and that's what they've called them, irregular migrants. And that's Labour's term. You will not show me a case of the Labour government using the term illegal immigrant to refer to someone claiming asylum.
Okay, well, I thought
done that.
I thought that term
and
was
I've seen
used
them
at the Labour Party conference, but I can't find anything online, so I'm going to give you that one. Before we go on,
even now in Parliament, even since the conference, they've done it just last week. When the issue has come up, they're not doing it enough, but they have emphasised the fact that people who are in this country legally, which includes asylum seekers, need to be treated with compassion.
Kirsty McTeer, thank you very much for the £5 super chat. So for economic progressive policies, we trans people are thrown under the bus. By the looks of things, yes.
Trans people have been thrown under the bus. Yeah.
And
the reason it's a mistake...
Phil, let me just go through the super chats. Andy Thompson, £5 super chat.
That one
I like this show, but if a klaxon went off each time Phil said Graham was wrong, this show would sound like an inner city car alarm at 2 a.m.
You've got to say, you're talking about things...
And then Maggie Pie, thank you very much.
Answer the super chat.
For the 20 Swedish krona. I think the UK will break up within my lifetime. I doubt that. Okay, do you want to address Kirsty's point about...
Yeah, let's go for Kirsty's thing. So, the reason why Labour are making a mistake there is because they're looking at the fact that over the last couple of years, people in this country have become, including their key voters, have become massively transphobic. That's a fact, right? That is an unfortunate fact. There's now a lot of people who are transphobic, or they don't necessarily think of themselves as transphobic. They go, well, why don't you just use the other toilets? Even though actually trans people aren't allowed to use any toilets now in some cases, if you look at the guidance. The reason why Labour are making a mistake there is because what they're not understanding, what they're not polling for clearly is saliency, right? The people who are transphobic, the people who will agree with Labour's position, which is the majority of their key voters, aren't going to vote Labour based on it because it's not a big part of their life. Like, there are people who will vote on anti-immigration policies because they think there's a link between immigration and some problem in their life. Almost nobody thinks there's a link between trans people having a piss and something in their life. Whereas for people who are trans or people who are close to trans people who want to support them, it can be a voting issue. That's where Labour are going wrong on that one. They're not polling saliency on it.
Yeah.
So I am saying that, and because I look at polling, I don't just look around a bit of an echo chamber on social media and get my views about the way the country thinks. I am very, very, very mathematical. I'm a rare beast in politics, in someone who properly understands how the maths works, how the surveying works. I understand that not every voter is of equal value.
Why did you waste your time in 2017 and 2019 when you knew that the polls said Labour were going to get their asses handed to them?
How did I waste my time?
By canvassing for Labour.
I didn't
knew they were
canvass
going to
for
lose.
Labour.
I thought you did. I thought you went door.
No, I promoted the idea of, on my channel, I didn't have a channel in 2017. In 2019, I promoted the idea of just getting people to turn out. Because there were, although the Conservatives were going to win, in individual constituencies, some results would be close enough that you could still swing them, right? So what I actually argued for was turn out to vote. Try and, if some people have got a problem getting to the vote, help them. Maybe, give them a lift if they're elderly or something if you're able to. That's what I did on my channel. I said I was quite clear we knew Labour were going to lose. It was obvious. Well, but at the same time,
there was
in
a
a
lot of
parliamentary system,
polls that
it's
went
not
out
binary.
Were like, they're absolutely stuffed. But then,
but on an individual basis, there were still some constituencies there are always constituencies that are going to be close.
Were you surprised when Trump won in 2016? Were you surprised when the
I can't remember in 2016. In 2017, I constantly said the polls are too close to say. I kept saying, no matter how many times people were saying this person says Kamala Harris is going to win and he's got it right in the previous ones. I was constantly saying the polls I'm seeing say it's too close to call, as it was.
Oh, yeah.
It was really close.
10 to his, thank you very much for the £5 super chat. Phil and Graham, please be friends. We are friends. But you have to let me interrupt now and again because we get super chats in and people are paying for this. Miss Paula Thomas.
We haven't answered the super chats.
£5 super chat. Just to be clear, Labour don't care how many trans people die violently as a result of their inaction. Just to be clear on that.
Right. So the next one was, I like the show with Klaxon went off, blah, 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 every time. Well, sorry, if you're going to say something about people, if Labour do this, then people will vote in this different way. You're going to have to come up with some polling evidence because I've got everything I say.
I'm not saying people are
about
going to
voting
vote.
behaviour
People
is
voted
based on
yesterday in an actual election.
Yes,
this isn't a survey. This is an actual election. This is actual people turnout, and only 11% voted for Labour in a Labour safe seat.
It wasn't a Labour safe seat. That's the point. It used to be. But now you've got the fact that yes, the Starmer effect is an effect, right? But you've also, but before that even. They are the incumbents in a cost of living crisis.
Yeah, they were the incumbents
from all over the world.
They were the incumbents in 2009 after the credit crunch, when people were on their arse, and Labour still won in Caerphilly for the Assembly.
No.
Okay,
it's because
Labour.
Right,
hold that thought.
No, stop it. We haven't got. You're not to do any more super chats. We've got time to do all of them. Not to do any until we've answered everyone's.
The next one's not a question. It's just a statement.
Don't care.
Go on.
So at the time, people want to vote for someone who can realistically win. Plaid were a much smaller party back then, right? Whereas also you've got to bear in mind, although they're the incumbents, there wasn't a great cost of living crisis. There'd been a recession, right?
Yeah.
But in actual fact, people were still better off than they were at the start of the Labour term. And in Wales, people are more, like we often say in Britain, people are slightly centre-left. In Wales, it's much more left. Yeah. People are much more left-wing in Wales. And
Welsh Labour are more left-wing than English Labour, aren't they? And they still had their asses handed to them.
Yeah, but they've got an option applied.
Yeah.
If you've got a choice, right, if you vote Labour all your life, then an identical Labour Party comes along, because the independence thing's not a big factor, right? Even Plaid, I mean, obviously they're openly in favour of independence and it forms part of their policies. But they are, Scotland's a totally different beast. They are, because the SNP are not like Labour. They've got some commonality, but they're not like
I know,
Labour.
but they demolished Labour a few years ago, didn't they?
Yeah, but that was in 2009. That's what I'm saying. That was totally different to Wales. Wales and Scotland voted in 2009 very, very differently to each other, because Wales want a Labour Party. Plaid are basically Labour for all practical purposes, because Plaid can't actually pull Wales out of the UK. For all practical purposes, Plaid are like Labour, but without the perceived failure. Well, they're the ones that haven't been in power and therefore don't take responsibility for things. Plaid won for the same reason why Reform UK also gained a load of votes there and across the country, because Reform UK are billing themselves as, we are the ones who don't have that taint of failure.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the reason.
But they should, because they made Brexit happen. I'm just going to interrupt you to say that Nick in Diff says, Graham, stop interrupting.
Yeah. Now,
hang on, before we go on, I've got, because otherwise I won't get through them all.
We haven't got through any.
Cavanola says, so the king goes to pray, but the Chicago Pope and probably went, please God, don't let the Archbishop of Canterbury see my name on that list. Lol. And then we've got Ivan for the £5 super chat there. I do not recognise the description. I stand by that. Thanks for that, Ivan. What we need from Starmer, says John, is strong, humane leadership with trans issues, etc. Not a scared rabbit staring into headlights. Thank you very much, John. I agree with you. And David Faulkner, thank you very much. I hope Scotland will have independence in my lifetime with 15 Hong Kongian dollars. So yeah, anyway, go on.
Well, related to that then is Maggie Pie thinking, I think the UK will break up in my lifetime. It depends how old you are. The first bit will be Northern Ireland, of course. Because it's heading that way anyway. It's always heading that way. In terms of Britain, it would be very disappointing. It won't help anyone. It'll be just like pulling out. I don't understand people thinking that Brexit was bad because it pulls us away from a much larger, more powerful economic force. But somehow doing the same thing nationally is better. It makes no sense.
But that's the thing, Phil. A lot of people vote not with their brains. They vote. I know,
but what I'm saying is, if we're going to talk about this issues sensibly, like Wales don't get to do anything. Like what would they get to do that's different? There'd be some social issues, because in terms of what's devolved, Wales isn't devolved as much as Scotland. It should be much more devolved. But in terms of, we would say Scotland, because Scotland's often actually the big one, where support for independence is stronger than it is in Wales. Like economically, everything's devolved in Scotland. It's all devolved. They can even set their own income tax rates. They have done. Like in terms of income tax, you said you want to talk about it a little bit if we get time.
Yes.
But one thing Labour could do to increase income tax without breaking the manifesto promises is just to add an extra. They could say like, £250,000 a year or more, 50%, something like that, right? Or 49% if you want to be like coy about it. Whether that would fill the hole, I don't know. But they could do that, and that wouldn't be a breach of the manifesto. Scotland have done that because they have the power to do that. The SNP have actually created extra tax bands. So Scotland have basically complete control over economic policy. If you look at I think I'm right in saying that. If you look at the, what do you call it? Reserved policy issues.
Yeah.
They're social. There's not that many, but of the ones that are, they're social. And I can understand the reason for that, because if you think about laws as being either social or economic, the laws that most of us are aware of are social laws, how to behave in society, right? And I can see the benefit, and you sort of want those to be the same. You don't want to grow up in one part of a country, be used to a certain way of behaving, go to another part of the country, and then find you've suddenly broken the law and you're going to prison. So I can understand that. But what it nonetheless means is that's all you would get in Wales. Yeah. They would get more control over social policy, although they do have some control.
Is this if they became independent? Is what you're talking about?
Yeah, if they became independent.
Yeah.
They wouldn't get any improvement in economic policy, and they'd cut themselves off from important markets. So economically, they would become poorer. So would Scotland.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, there's a thing of like
If
Scotland.
you don't care about that, that's fine.
Scotland could become independent and then rejoin the EU, and that would be a boom. But the problem is that most of the trade from Scotland goes to.
There's two problems. The first problem is that, yes, their biggest trading partner is basically England, which means that it would be economically, like, if you want Scotland to be poorer but happier, if that's how you see it, that's fine. I'm not saying there's no good reason to vote for independence. What I'm saying is you cannot argue that it'll also work out economically because you're using the same arguments the Brexiteers use.
This is one of the reasons the SNP lost in 2014, the referendum, because they actually put out a book that said what was going to happen in the wake of Scotland becoming an independent nation. And they were honest about it. The Reefuck lot watched that. They saw that, the UKIPers at the time. And they said, oh, hang on. What we need to do is make sure that we put no policies ahead of time of like how we're actually going to do this or the consequences or whatever.
Absolutely.
But I wanted to talk a little bit about Brexit. This brings back to the third thing I wanted to talk about today. But can we just finish off on this topic on the upcoming budget? If Rachel Reeves puts 1 penny on income tax, which looks like she's going to do, will she get away with it?
So I actually asked this question of my viewers earlier on. So it depends how it's done. First of all, my instinct is to go, this is too dodgy because there's no getting away from it. Right, in terms of manifesto promises, I don't think there's ever been a manifesto in history that wasn't broken by the government. I think there's always but there's a difference between a manifesto promise that's sort of in there on page 67 that no one really knew about, and a manifesto promise that you blared through a, sorry, no pun intended, megaphone during the campaign, right? I think promising not to increase those specific rates of income tax was a fairly big manifesto promise. And I think politically it would be, the reason why it's been leaked now is because the Treasury are putting out feelers. Everything you're seeing leaked is the Treasury sounding
the two-child benefit cap is going. I think that's pretty solid. We know that's definitely going in this budget.
But the income tax thing, see, I get it because I was just looking at the stats on this. You know, income tax is by far the biggest chunk of the tax receipts. So putting it up by a small amount is just the tidiest way to do it. But there's a couple of things to this. First of all, it's a very clear manifesto breach. And at that point, it's like there's no such thing as a manifesto promise that is now safe. Secondly, how do you do it? Because if you just put up the basic rate by 1%, what that means is anyone earning less than 50 grand a year, their income tax is going up by 1%. But anyone earning significantly above £50,000 a year, their income tax will be going up, but by less than 1%. And they are the ones who are more, that's not putting so that will basically, your workers on lower incomes will not just be paying more income tax when they were promised they wouldn't. They will be paying percentage-wise a bigger increase than richer people. So I think it would be a stunning, even if, and I'm still skeptical, even if putting up income tax was the least bad option. Yeah. If you just put up the basic rate by a penny, that would look stunningly bad because that's like you saying, you go from we were going to protect working people to we're actually going to give them the biggest burden.
Yeah. And just from a political point of view, we see that the most popular thing that Labour could do if they're going to have to increase taxes is increase taxes on the wealthy. And I know there's difficulties in this, and I know it's not worked particularly well in other countries, but just from a political point of view, even if it doesn't fill your 30 billion black hole, still you'll get some political credit out of it and say, well, we did tax the rich, which they've done already with the VAT on schools, with the getting rid of the tax loophole on inheritance tax. But before we go on, Maggie Pie, thank you very much for the 50 Swedish krona. You've been waiting patiently to say this. If you look at the Nordic countries of the size of what an independent Scotland or Wales would be, we're doing fine because we're close to Europe. Spooky Saga, thank you very much for Spooky Sagas. Thank you very much for the £5 super chat. Great question for Graham. At what point in this parliament would you be seriously worried Labour are heading for defeat if the polls stay the same? 2027, 2027, if the polls have not improved for Labour, they are, from my point of view, I think they're going to be absolutely...
Yeah, but they will have improved, so that's fine. Whether it's enough is another matter. They will definitely
we don't know what's
improve
going to
in
happen,
2027.
Phil. What if Trump? What if the AI bubble bursts? Right, the
Okay, that's a
American
problem,
economy
but-
collapses, and therefore the worldwide economy collapses. Trade, grinds to a halt. We can't get any new updates for our software, for our communication. People can't get to their jobs. All this stuff falls apart.
Yes, that is true.
And then
That
Labour are
is
sitting there
something.
going, "Whoopsies! It's not even their fault."
Yeah, but that is true. That would screw over any government. And actually, what you're suggesting there is just for others. That is exactly the reason why we are having to suck up to Trump.
Yeah.
Literally that. Because yes, that will screw any government. If that happens, all that happens. The AI bubble bursting is nothing that anyone can really... Well, actually, you say that. It's interesting. Andrew Bailey was saying some interesting things about that earlier this week. There's an implication that he thinks there is something we can do. But in terms of the other stuff, that would screw anyone. But nonetheless, to a large extent, beyond Andrew Bailey suggesting that he thinks there is something we can do to shield ourselves, that would involve the Treasury, so it would involve the government. It wouldn't be just the Bank of England doing it, it would need the Treasury.
Yeah.
But he didn't elaborate exactly. But he suggests that he thinks the Bank of England and the Treasury combined could take action to shield us from that. Yeah. But yeah, anything external, obviously, they can only focus on internal stuff.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. But I mean, that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is in 2027, if the polls have not improved, they are screwed.
Well, at that
even
point,
if they change the leader, even if they change their entire leadership team, at that point, they're still probably going to be screwed.
There are two big red buttons they can press at that point.
Ooh, tell us about these red buttons.
The first one would be, yes, they could then change the leader at that point, right? The second one is you switch the election to a single issue on which Reform UK cannot possibly, that would absolutely divide people, and Reform UK could not possibly counter you on. So the two obvious ones, first of all, would be electoral reform, but Reform UK could promise to do the same thing, so you'd lose your single issue election.
Yes.
The other one would be something big like rejoining the single market.
Yeah. I think there's very likely that something like that will be the contentious issue in the next election. Because that's something to hold on to. Don't forget, everyone else who was involved in Brexit's pretty much gone now. It's just now.
Oh yeah. They
hang this all on.
The thing is, the suggestion is, we even had this from Peter Mandelson, because we know he was, advising Starmer at the time, and he said he expected Labour to talk about rejoining the EU, not just the single market, rejoining the EU after this 10 years.
Yeah.
But obviously they've got to get the 10 years first. So there is an expectation amongst senior influential people in Labour that this would be the way they'd intend to go once. The Labour's strategy is to basically fix what they can fix, because it would take about 10 years to rejoin the EU anyway. Fix what they can fix, show that they can actually be trusted with the country, and then look at doing something a bit more. Because as well, the other thing to bear in mind is after another 10 years, we're already statistically at the point, you can't say for certain because it's, anonymous, but statistically speaking, when you consider the age breakdown by Brexit vote, and you consider the deaths rates by age since 2016, it is statistically basically certain now that there are more Remain voters left alive than Leave voters. Yeah. And you've also got at the moment 9 years worth of young people who are now able to vote, who couldn't vote during the referendum, and we know that overwhelmingly they would have voted to Remain. So it is just certain that there are way more Remain voters now than Leave voters, just statistically, because of deaths and coming of age. Even
if not one person on this island has changed their mind. Yeah. Miss Paula Thomas, thank you very much for the £5 super chat. But English firms who want to trade with the EU will move north of the border to do so. Yeah, but I mean, that's not as simple as you might think. And look,
the other thing to point out,
I think if people want to pull out of the UK in Scotland, I think they've got every fucking right to. I think, they've got justifications, historical justifications for. I mean, the big one for me being Brexit, being forced out of the EU against Scotland's will. and it was almost a super majority in Scotland to stay in the EU, and that was completely ignored. I mean, look at poor old Gibraltar. They voted 99% to stay in the EU. And
they are getting a bit of a deal, though. They're
part of Schengen now. They're part of Schengen.
Yeah, Nigel Farage isn't very happy.
But I understand that, but I think that we have to be realistic, that if Scotland does get independent, and I'm not saying this to be like a fearmonger or nothing, but in the same way that Brexit always came with economic damage, I think that Scotland moving away, Wales moving away from the rest of the UK will cause economic damage.
Yeah, the thing you've got to understand as well, what people didn't understand with Brexit, is that distance matters. You can't. An independent Scotland could not trade with the rest of the EU like they do now, because they wouldn't be able to go through England.
Yeah, they would. They'll do a deal.
They do it.
They're going to build a fucking wall. Come on.
They are. They will literally be forced to build a wall.
On the M6.
No, they'll be forced to build a wall, because if they want to join the single market, that's basically one of the conditions.
Maybe the Scottish would like a wall. Keep the English out. Well, keep the Sassenachs out.
Oh no! Ironically, it wouldn't prevent any. It wouldn't stop movement. That's fine. I mean, we had a free travel agreement with Ireland predating the European community and post-dating Brexit. That's fine. We could certainly arrange free movement with Scotland. We could absolutely agree.
There's about 9 roads that traverse the border,
Well, because most of it's empty. How many roads do you need? It's mostly empty.
There's 2 big ones and then there's little ones.
I mean, there's not many roads. Once you go beyond Edinburgh and Glasgow, there's really not many either people or roads.
No.
If you look at the route,
there are wild hairy haggises.
There's
a lot of oil up there. There's a lot of wind. A lot of wind power. Ivan, thank you very much for the £5 super chat. All the noise from certain sections about welfare again is nonsensical after the U-turns. Well, we don't know. And this is the thing about sort of the budget coming up. They are putting out feelers. We don't know if they're going to do this. We don't know if they're not going to do it. The only thing that I think is certain is that they're going to get rid of the 2-child benefit cap, because lots of Labour MPs want to get rid of that.
I would say
that's in question. But anything else?
What I would say on that is there's Labour, and this is again where it comes down to those key swing voters. Those key swing voters absolutely hate welfare spending, because welfare spending is for people who are pensioners. You've got the state pension, that's the biggest chunk of it.
Yeah.
You've got people on out of work benefits, they think they're scroungers. You've got people on in-work benefits because of some disabilities or something like that. Most of these people do not themselves have disabilities, right? So basically, welfare spending, the Department for Work and Pensions by budget is the biggest government department.
Yeah.
It spends more than anyone, including the NHS. And the NHS is not a government department, so that's the whole of health and social care. A lot of key voters resent it. So, Reeves, I am 99% certain, based on what she's been saying, Labour think they need at least a token cut to some aspect of the welfare bill. So, although I take the point that some people will at the moment be scaremongering, I will also take the point, strategically, if Labour do nothing to the welfare bill other than, remember, they've already boosted, although they were threatening to take PIP from some people, they were boosting it for everyone who was going to get it, which now means more people than they intended. So that bill's going to go up. Removing the 2-child cap. The 2-child cap's broadly popular with key swing voters. Honestly, it is.
Well,
the latest polling shows that as well. So it's actually, they're going against their own key voters in getting rid of it. They should get rid of it, but they're going against their own key voters in doing it.
Sometimes you've just got.
But my point is, at the moment, the welfare bill is going up, whereas the voters want it to go down.
The 2-child cap
forces them to do something. They're going to have to cut. What I'm going to say, in this budget, I am expecting something in the welfare budget to be cut, at least as a token, to show that it's not going up. So something's got to give, because politically speaking, they need to cut. And I think on that point, see, here's the thing: when it comes to polling, we have to remember Labour are polling, and they know who their key voters are, and they are asking them questions all the time. They do have, despite what you might think, they do have their pulse on their key swing voters. I just think there's a bit of a problem in the people they've got asking the right questions in the right way and the analysis of it. But they are asking, they do know who their key voters are, and they do know what they think. I just don't think they're testing saliency. I think that's their big problem. But we don't know what it says. They don't publish it. So we don't know. So whenever.
Well, exactly.
So, no. My point is that when Labour do something that seems odd, right? For all I know, that's something that's come up in their internal polling. We don't get that. I don't have any polling that says what their key voters think, right? So the only time I can say they've definitely got their polling wrong is when it is inconsistent with the more general polling we do have, because their internal polling will not be at odds with the general polling, which is all we have. All we have is general polling, right? It won't be at odds with it. It will just add further information. So when I say about the trans issue, we know that that's wrong because I have seen general polling which tells me that it's at odds with that. When it comes to the winter fuel allowance thing, I knew that they hadn't polled properly on that one because we can see the result of that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to this one about needing to cut the welfare bill, that is actually consistent with general polling as well. So I can absolutely believe that they've got polling that says their voters, their key voters, expect the welfare bill to go down because that is consistent with the more general polling that we do have access to. So I think something has to give in the welfare bill.
Well, that's not good. Okay, so Ivan, thank you very much for the £10 super chat. I hate single issue elections. That political strategy is toxic and divisive and not the real world for everyday people. People have so many issues they care about. Yeah, Ivan, and it's one of the reasons I don't like referendums. I don't like them because they tear apart families. They tear apart friendships that have lasted for years. And I mean... No, even the Scottish referendum, which I don't think was done particularly badly. I know families that still don't talk to each other because of a referendum we had 11 years ago.
Whereas I'm not saying we should go all the way like Switzerland, but in Switzerland it's so commonplace.
Yeah,
it's like wiping their arse. They don't
they have a referenda-led democracy. Ivan, again, thank you for the £5 super chat. I'm not in favour of the Schengen agreement, but. Aside, how is Scotland following it? Surely that is a UK decision. Scotland wouldn't be able to join Schengen just because
not if it wanted free travel with England, which would be more valuable.
Ireland's not part of Schengen for this reason that we have free travel between the UK and Ireland. And also, we have, we can go and live in Ireland. We can't live in the rest of the EU, thanks to Nigel Farage. Andrew,
that's the escape route, basically. That's the escape route.
Ireland's the escape route. Live there for 5 years, get yourself an Irish passport, and then you can live anywhere you want in Europe. £5 super chat from Andrew. I'd love to know who Phil thinks should lead the Labour Party after Starmer, if any.
Who's most likely to win the election? Really simple. I'm not making any more mistakes. I made a mistake. Although I wasn't in Labour at the time, I still supported Ed Miliband when he stood for the leadership, and that was the wrong decision. I accept that now. So the answer is really this simple: whoever is best placed to win the election. Not based on any personal approval. I will vote for someone I think is a right bastard if I think they'll win.
Yeah. Okay. Peter
Mandelson. I won't, because I won't be in Labour. I probably won't be in Labour again. Sorry.
Tony Blair. Peter Mandelson.
No, because he is like... No, you can't have someone from the past. It'd have to be someone. First of all, it'd have to be someone who's actually competent. Labour, under Starmer, the government side of it is being run competently. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with the governance.
They keep doing daft shit.
They do keep doing daft shit.
That reshuffle last month was fucking insane. Oh, come on. All things being equal. That's taking Lammy out at the Foreign Office, taking Jonathan Reynolds out of trade.
Haven't. They've got the best of both worlds there. They've got, because he's still doing foreign affairs. Because the best thing about Lammy was he has all these great personal contacts around the world. Well, they're still using those. He's now doing it as Deputy Prime Minister, who's basically like a second foreign secretary at the moment. Which can only make me wonder what he's doing in the Justice Department.
Yeah. Chris Bryant, says Andrew. I do like Chris Bryant. I like that Darren Jones.
You've got to have someone who can like enforce their will on MPs. Can he? I mean, maybe he can. I don't know, but can he? There's lots of MPs I like, but they wouldn't necessarily be good prime ministers.
Yeah. Martin
They've
Harris.
got to win the election. Gordon Brown is, in my lifetime, he is the prime minister I most admire as prime minister, but he weren't going to.
He wasn't a very good prime minister. Yeah.
He wasn't very good at winning elections.
I think he was a great chancellor. I just want to say,
I thought he was a better prime minister than chancellor. I actually thought it was better when they had Alistair Darling as chancellor and Gordon Brown as prime minister.
Where am I? Mike's book has just arrived, Graham. Try not to go on too late tonight so I can read it after the show. Yeah, I've got mine today as well, and it's signed by Mike Dix. There you go. It says, Graham, best wishes, Mike Dix, 2025, you bellend. So there you go. That's a nice little heartwarming message there from Mike. If you'd like to get a copy of the Trumpton Project, the link is in the chat now, and it's all of Mike's Trumpton style cartoons from the last year of all the shit that's been going down. There's Trump there with his fucking crazy hat on in Congress and stuff. There's Trump and Putin carving up the planet between themselves. So yeah, if you want to grab a copy of that, head over to MikeDixArt.com.
So really, it's Xi Jinping. Putin is just basically China's bitch now.
Oh, Putin is.
Well, I mean,
he's in a lot of trouble now that the oil thing's happened. That's it for him, I think.
Well, coal. A video that I've been holding on to for ages. I'll have to bring it out tomorrow. Their coal industry's collapsed.
Yeah.
So it was massively profitable 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And now it's making massive losses.
Well, the oil thing, because it's two fronts, isn't it? Because it's the Ukrainians have been bombing the shit out of the refineries, which has and they've stopped exports. They've stopped oil exports because they desperately need the oil for Russia itself.
The other problem as well is some of the infrastructure, particularly when you've got to, like, if you can't sell as much in Europe where there was already very sophisticated, established infrastructure to do so, pipelines, trains, stuff like that. So they're now having to send, you're having to send exports to the east to go through Asia and so on. Well, that's going through Siberia and places like that. It's not the most hospitable parts of Russia, and with very dodgy infrastructure as it is. And then when you think, the coal exports were helping to fund a lot of that rail infrastructure in the east of Russia. But because it's now costing, the 60% of coal producers are just basically operating at a loss now. So it's actually costing them to send coal abroad. So there's all sorts of knock-on effects from it. So when people are sort of saying, will the Russian economy actually collapse? It's something like this that could actually do it, rather than one big thing. Things like, because we saw it in the north of England during Thatcher. If you've got a community, a town or a city that's got an industry upon which it's dependent, then you just screw the whole thing, because that industry, all of those jobs goes, which means all of those pay packets go, which means they're not spending in local services and the shops and stuff like that, which means that they have to then lay people off. Then you don't have as much in the way of business rates being raised. So there's lower, those regions are producing lower taxes, so there's less money for public services. It all creates like a spiral, and then before you know it, the specials are bringing out Ghost Town. So that's what's going to be happening in Russia now.
Yeah. I agree. And also, apparently the EU this week has just had enough with Hungary and Slovakia. So if you don't know, Hungary and Slovakia are the two big holdouts for energy from...
The Putinists.
Yeah, they're Putinist governments, and they are holding out, and anything the EU want to do to stop Russian energy coming in. That's oil and also gas. And it looks like they've actually got to take them to task this week. They've expected to back a new bill that will permanently cut Russian gas supplies to Hungary and Slovakia, whether they like it or not.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
this
it's
is
a longer route to
huge.
do that. The quickest way to apply sanctions is just to go through the council, but that needs unanimous approval, which Hungary have not. But the EU do have way of squeezing Orban's balls.
This is fucking staggering, isn't it? This is short memory, isn't it? Like this is two places. So
Hungary,
Czechoslovakia
especially,
at the time,
Slovakia,
and Hungary that suffered so much under the tyrannical rule of Moscow for 50 fucking years. And then finally they loosed the shackles and they joined the EU, and it's all like, yeah, cool. And they're like, no, we still want to go back to Moscow, fucking Putin daddy. I mean, I can't really blame Georgia as much, because they've never had They never really got off the ground in that respect.
Exactly.
But
no, it's the same with
for
Russia
a country
itself.
like Russia, for a country like Georgia, where they're actively voting, and I know that it's all fucking rigged, right? But they have voted in the Georgian Dream Party, which is a Putinist party, after being invaded and having a third of their territory taken by Putin back in 2008 when he took South Ossetia and Abkhazia.
But it's like you say with Georgia, in terms of the history of it, it's like Russia itself. Like I keep saying, as soon as Americans realise that they're a fascist dictatorship, they will push back in a big way. They're already pushing back in quite an impressive way, but they will properly push back. Fascism won't last in America because Americans have been used to liberal democracy, and they're as soon as they realise it's hurting them, they'll fight back. Whereas in Russia, I can see it lasting forever because Russians have they've always been used to this idea that they will trade their freedom in return for a strong leader on the world stage. So the only way Putin can fall, really, other than Father Time finally taking him, is if he is seen to be, which is why he can't afford to stop the war with the Ukraine, or one of the reasons. There's several.
He will die. He will literally not be with us anymore.
But I can see Russia. Russia had a brief taste of democracy under an absolute pisshead who meant well, but they didn't get the instant rewards from it. They didn't get, and that's where the West failed. Like Boris Yeltsin was saying to the West, he was pleading with them, "You need to help us raise people's standard of living, otherwise a democracy won't last." He said that, and we did the same thing. We did after the First World War. We allowed a country to suffer, and then it slid into dictatorship. Well, we don't learn.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. Russia has just been used to that. Russia is used to the idea of it's a deal, it's part of the covenant. They will sacrifice their freedom in return for security. So the only way Putin's in trouble is that security going, because now the petrol price has gone up. It takes 2 hours to refuel in some places.
Yeah.
I'm just going out to refuel the car. All right, see you in 4 hours' time. They don't like that because cheap petrol is supposed to be part of that covenant, which is hilarious, really, because this thing about the Tomahawk missiles. I mean, this goes back to Biden's era. It was Biden that also refused to supply Tomahawk missiles. So Ukraine says, well, we'll just invent some flamingos then and do it ourselves.
I think Ivan's made a really good point here. I'm given a super chat as well. It's very kind of you, Ivan. Thank you. These voters who resent welfare soon change their mind if they need it.
Oh, yeah, they do. This is in 2020. Cast your mind back. 2020, when all of a sudden there were going to be a shitload of middle-class people needing to access the benefit system. What happened? Yeah. The Tories suddenly reformed it. Yeah. They reformed it back again, don't you worry. But they realised there were going to be a shitload of key voters who were going to see just how cruel and heartless and mechanical the benefit system was, and they thought, shit. Yeah. So they greased a lot of wheels in the Department for Work and Pensions in 2020, while with everything they did. And then and remember, what was it? What was the point at which furlough was stopped? It wasn't the point at which it wasn't needed. It was the point at which key voters didn't need it.
Yeah.
And then it all went back again. All went back. But yeah, absolutely. These people, if they had to interface themselves with the system, but they don't. That is the point. They don't.
Yeah. Just a bit of a gear change here. How much do you reckon Nottingham County Council has spent on flags?
Go on. Is this a rhetorical question? You can't answer.
£75,000.
Seriously.
On more than 150 Union Jacks, which will be displayed in 82 locations in Rushcliffe, Boxtrow, Bassett Law, Newark, Mansfield, Ashfield, and Gelding.
No.
Even.
Hold on. How many?
£75,000.
On 150?
On 150 new Union Jacks.
It's going to cost £5,000 a flag.
No, 500. £457 per flag, includes brackets, traffic management, and cherry pickers.
Oh, I suppose they've got to put them up.
Yeah, they've got to put them up, mate.
Still, 75 grand. I mean,
got to put the poles.
They're mad, aren't they? But it's like in your part of the country. I mean, one of your MPs, not your MP, but one of your MPs, brought it up in PMQs this week about the fact that Crafty Wank and his posse had refused to support the Pride March, so that won't happen. So people who want to go to a Pride event near Durham will now go somewhere else. They go and spend their money in another county's businesses. And also, is it the Lumiere or something like that? Another big one for Durham?
Yeah, Lumiere event.
So again, that's
really
just
big.
money
Every 2
draining
years.
out the county.
That's
money
hundreds of
draining
thousands
out
of
the
people come to
county.
it. Yeah.
It's mad, isn't it?
Yeah, the whole
They came
city
in
centre
going,
gets
"Oh,
sectioned off, and
they're going, we're going to reduce your council tax by cutting waste," and they decided, "Oh no, we've got a better idea. We'll raise your council tax, and then we'll shrink the economy." That's a better idea, isn't it? That's what you really voted for, isn't it?
there's a statue of some fucker in the middle of our main town square here, city square, I guess, and on horseback, and it's huge, right? And they built a massive snow globe around it, and then had like snow going up all around this, and you could stand outside and watch, and it was all lit up. It's all to do with lights, festival of lights, and it's just incredible. I mean, it's a lot of fun, even as an adult. Kids absolutely love it, and Refucker saying, "Oh, it's not our fault. It's not our fault. They decided not to do it anymore before we came along," and it's like, no. They put the decision forward to decide whether to do something, and because Refucker here in Durham had done nothing in the last 6 months except argue amongst themselves, there's been no decision made, and so the people who organise it said, well, okay, we'll take it elsewhere then, because all the places want it, because it's, obviously it brings a lot of people in. Maggie Pie, thank you very much for the 50 Swedish krona, which might be our last super chat of the afternoon. For as long as Refuck is polling as strongly as they are, it would be difficult for the UK to rejoin the EU. We need to be able to trust you to stay. Yeah, I can't agree more, Maggie. We've talked about this before.
I'd be based on a referendum.
More people
at the same time, I'd take that view, because if you take that view, then we're basically bound forever, because there will always be a Eurosceptic party.
Yeah, but they're not going to be as ascendant in the polls in the future. I can't see that. Not in 10 years' time.
But no, if Labour do it, they just have to go for it.
But in the next 2 years, the big things that Labour need to do, as far as I'm concerned, they need to improve their comms. They need to, have a good think about policies before they, take them to Parliament and then have their own MPs vote against them. Big mistakes. But a big one is to get the immigration and especially the asylum-seeking immigration thing put to bed. Like you put in legal, safe routes to get into the UK, which we had before 2010.
But they're not going to do that.
And that steals Refuck's thunder, because what can they say? Oh, stop the boats, and we stop them. Yeah,
I know. They're not going to, though. But they can at least stop talking about it. They can at least stop talking about it.
They're not going to stop. Newspapers every day are going to be sitting there getting photos of people on boats on the front of the newspapers.
It's utterly insane. It's insane to me, but they're not going to. And they're committed. I mean, there's a point at which to stop the boats would, even if you did that, it would take a few years anyway, because you'd have to build up the infrastructure. They're clearly not going to. So they can stop the accommodation being an issue. They can stop the accommodation being an issue. The idea, I just hope that they don't create mental health problems with these so-called migrant villages, which are really like migrant prisons.
But also, Phil, what's stopping us from rejoining the Dublin Agreement? Like, Switzerland's part of it, Liechtenstein, Iceland, Norway.
Well, we'd have to negotiate, and the EU, to be honest, the EU isn't all that. The EU's also you've got to remember, this issue of asylum is not a British problem, it's a problem everywhere in Europe.
Yeah.
It's been caused, just to be clear, it's deliberate operation by Putin, who has created massive instability in Central and Northern Africa, and he's deliberately driven refugees to Europe to destabilize, because he knew what the impact would be of lots of, and then this is what we have to understand. You have to understand human psychology, because asylum for a lot of people a lot of people are absolutely fine with controlled immigration, which is why we shouldn't really be artificially squeezing the bollocks of economic migration. Mm-hmm. But asylum is seen as an uncontrolled form, and it's very difficult to counter that. if people think the numbers are greater than they are, and they do in this country. Like Germany, you can understand it a bit because they actually did in quite a short space of time take basically 1 million refugees. Yeah. We've never taken anywhere near that. And but people think that we have far more asylum claimants each year than we actually do. They think it's way more than it is.
Yeah.
And that's a difficult one to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Agreed. Anyway, so we're going to have to leave it at that, I'm afraid. We did get through most of the stuff we wanted to discuss. I want to go about Brexit a bit more, about Labour's policy on Brexit being a bit muddy at the moment. There is a good article, I think it was in North East Bylines or something, which I was reading the other day, about Labour's sort of stance on Europe. And,
they haven't quite worked it out.
Labour in the past were quite internationalist, and it was Labour.
No, they are now.
In the 2000s, that really pushed for the expansion of the EU into 10 more countries in the East. That led to a lot of the anti-EU propaganda coming out from people who I don't like people from Poland coming here. I don't like people from Hungary. I don't like people from Romania and Bulgaria.
But they still are. The language is still very much of that, of closer trade ties. They just hadn't wanted to attack Brexit before now. But the problem they've got now is it's almost like they're trying to attack. Well, it is like. They're using it as a stick to beat Farage with, but the problem is they're in power. And I said this as soon as it became clear that this is the line they were going to take. And inevitably, this is exactly what's happened. Yeah. So what happens is, so they're trying to use it as a way of, right, it's actually, if you think about it, Nigel Farage's fault we're going to put up taxes next week or next month. Fine. I'm not sure people will believe you, but okay. But the obvious counter to that is, so if Brexit was such a problem and you're in government now, shouldn't you be reversing it? Ed Davey asked, it was inevitable, clear as he asked, and he didn't go for a big one. He didn't go for something stupid. He just said, what about the customs union? Union, right? The Tories signed us up to a customs union in the last parliament, not even anything in the manifesto. Now, I get that we can't do it because it was in the manifesto. I get that we can't do it this parliament, but we could work our way up to putting it in the next manifesto.
Yeah.
But that wouldn't be a big single issue thing. So for me, if Labour get to a point where they're a couple of years out from the election, say this time in 2 years' time, and it's still not looking hopeful, and they need to go for a big red button, single market. Yeah. I would say that's a better one than the EU, because if you talk about joining the EU, then you've got the issue of currency, and that will screw it. Yeah. Whereas single market, I think that could do it. Because what are the downsides?
I would be genuinely shocked if in 10 years' time, when we finally decide that's a good idea to rejoin the EU, and we start making applications, if the EU was really stubborn on the currency thing, I don't think they would be. Because I'm not saying this to be arrogant. I'm saying this is this is the real politic of the situation. We are one of the biggest economies, not just in Europe, but in the world, and we're right on the doorstep of Europe. Would they rather have us as a collaborator or as competition?
I will just counter that. So here's the thing. I think we could negotiate an exemption from it, definitely. But I do not think the EU will say that before the negotiations, which means we'd have to go into the referendum we could lose it. And part of the reason I'll say that is just look at the way the EU are at the moment over the Windsor Agreement, the Windsor Framework, right? Mm. So in theory, basically what's got to happen is Labour want this deal finalising, this trade deal with the EU finalising, but the EU are saying you have to show us you can stick to your word first by fully implementing the Windsor Framework. So this is what the EU want us to do. They want us to apply the Windsor Framework fully, which applies politically sensitive trade friction between Britain and Northern Ireland. Mm. And then when we've done that, the EU will then agree the trade deal, which means we can then loosen that trade friction between Britain and Northern Ireland. So obviously you can understand from Labour's point of view, they're thinking, well, why can't we just follow the trajectory of the deal? Do you know what I mean? So the EU are I'm not saying for unreasonable purposes, but they are nonetheless making us suffer unnecessarily from our point of view, because it's like, but if we agreed the trade deal, we wouldn't need all of the Windsor Framework.
Yeah.
but they're making us do it anyway as a show of good faith, which could be, you can say, is quite reasonable. But that is the bureaucratic nature of the EU. Yeah. That is that bureaucracy, which will also work for the next referendum. They will not say, they will insist that actually it is quite normal to join the euro. That will be their position as we go into the referendum, which is why I say the best way to deal with that will be to, first of all, say, right, we're going to have 2 referendums, and it'll be in law, 2 referenda. One is just to start negotiations. Then there will be, whatever those negotiations come up, there will be a confirmatory referendum at the end of the process. So the first referendum is not to join the EU. It is to agree to allow the government to conduct negotiations with a view to a deal. And then you'll have another referendum. And if you don't like it, you can vote it away.
Yeah.
That's the best way to deal with that.
Yeah, that would be good. And you know, I do think that single market customs union is going to come up in the next few years. I absolutely have no doubt about that.
Customs union is by far the easiest.
We're now having yearly meetings with the EU instead of once every 5 years under the Tories to discuss ever closer ties. And we need it because we need the fucking money. Like, our economy is in the shitter. Our economy didn't grow from 2007 to 2022. It was at $3 trillion. Do you know what did grow? Our population, and therefore our GDP per capita went down from $50,000 to $45,000 per person, right? In Ireland, next door, it went from $50,000 in what it was in 2007. It's now doubled. It's over $100,000 per person. And I know that's skewed by the fact that Google are over there and shit, but the living standards in Ireland right now are so much better than living standards in England.
A better example would be Germany, because that's a large economy. And unlike, France made the same mistake. See, what Germany did after the banking crisis is what Labour were doing, right? The only thing that screwed Germany over, they were actually, come like 2015, 2016, they were laughing. They'd actually recovered from the banking crisis. Then, of course, they had Dieselgate. That screwed them, didn't it? And then, of course, a couple of years ago, they had Nord Stream disappear. So the reason why Germany took economic hits more recently was because of their car industry and their own folly, we could say, in getting a bit too dependent on Russia for trade. But in terms of what they did after the banking crisis, they got their national debt didn't keep rising and rising. It went up while there's spending during the tough times, and then it went down again.
That's why they're still the 4th biggest economy in the world, and we're now the 6th. And we are on course to overtake them.
The annoying thing is, we were doing basically the same.
Before all the posh people got together and said, let's screw over everyone who's not a millionaire. And that's what Nigel Farage did, and he's made a fuckload of money out of it. Like, the amount of money that man's made out of Brexit is eye-watering. And don't forget, his kids can still go and live and work in Europe. Yours can't.
He
That's
can't.
Nice, isn't it?
He can't.
He's got the money to. He's got the money to. He didn't get his German passport that he applied for, but he's got the money to pay for residency when he wants to the world.
I'm not sure. He could have residency, he could probably have residency.
And you've got residency, you can work. He can do something that the rest of us can't. There's no more Alfreda saying,
well,
over the working classes, and it was the posh upper elite that absolutely masterminded this. Everyone involved with telling you to vote for Brexit went to private school. Every fucking last one of them. Yeah, men of the people, apparently. Yeah. Posh bastards. Anyway, right, get off my high horse about Brexit for a moment. Before we go, Maggie Pie in there with a 50 Swedish krona. Thank you very much. What Labour needs to do is take a genuine stance on something. I don't care if it's mandatory frog costumes for NHS nurses. It just needs to be something. Yeah, okay.
Well, they sort of have.
Yeah, but you're saying they sort of have. And this is the problem. This is the communication thing, isn't it? Like, they need to say, right, we're going to do this, and it's going to be also, and like, keeping us dated. I read a really interesting article the other day about rail nationalisation. Now, over half of the rail franchises in the country are now nationalised. Did Labour do a big thing about it? Big song and dance? Did they put out the cabaret? Did they fuck?
Well, no, they actually did, but no one paid attention to it. They were really bad at
it. They are really bad at it.
No, they honestly did. They did. They did. You just didn't see it because they're really bad at it.
Yeah.
The other thing I will say, though, is it would have been a bit of a cheek anyway, because although technically, yes, it's a bit of a milestone, a good chunk of it, like the Tories still nationalise more than they have so far. Now, it will all be nationalised before the next election.
Yeah.
The rail companies, that is, not the railways. But they're just really bad at it.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. This is what I said. Isn't it what I said years ago to pass the message on? That they cannot just turn it on when they want. If they want a message to be heard, they have to spend every day for years building up the audience.
Always be campaigning.
Exactly.
Don't stop campaigning.
Have that audience
Don't
build it up.
Stop campaigning.
Because you cannot just say something every now and then and expect it to be heard. It's like farting in the wind.
Yeah. Ivan, thank you very much for the £10 super chat. I'm not on the same page on this. However, I will always support both of your channels. I and many others can't go through falling out with family and friends again. I have higher priorities. I think Ivan's talking about a referendum.
Yes, I mean, that is the big reason why Labour have been coy on it. Because, I mean, make no mistake, Labour is now run by people who want to be back in the EU.
Yes.
Right? But, yes, that is true. It's basically caused the most...
I know that because I've got drunk with
social,
some of them.
It caused the most social friction since the English Civil War, quite frankly.
Yeah.
So it has, and it's a shame. It's a shame people couldn't just do what my wife did with her mum, and just basically when she tries to bring it up, just goes, "We're not talking about this." It's a shame other people couldn't just do that. Just says, "Well, this is something we can't talk about." But it is what it is. It did break up a lot of friendships and relationships, and yeah, there's a lot of people who don't want that happening again.
Fair enough.
Which is why Labour have taken that softly approach, but nonetheless, it is screwing us.
Yes, and I think that it's
tens of billions of pounds a year in taxes.
Yeah, that we're not 40 billion a year in taxes that we're not getting because of Brexit. 40. Can you imagine how much stuff we could do with 40 billion pounds?
Well, she wouldn't have a hole to fill in. Rachel Reeves wouldn't have a hole. She would. There'd be no problem with this budget. She'd be coming out.
What you say about Rachel Reeves' holes will be done for sexism and misogyny. Anyway, but yes. Okay, so thanks very much, Phil, for joining us this afternoon for this episode of The Agenda, in which we're telling Labour what they should be doing again. Which, familiar territory, I guess. But I'll be back at 9:30 tonight with The Agenda, and tomorrow Phil's back at 7 o'clock for his live show, his live stream. Is it members only? Or is it only members can comment?
Only members can comment.
Only members can comment. So go find, if you're not already subscribed to A Different Bias, go and subscribe to A Different Bias.
Discussing Trump tomorrow.
Oh dear. Oof.
Do you know he wants to pay himself? He wants the American. He's suing himself.
Yes.
Do you know that?
He's suing his own Justice Department.
For $230 million.
Yeah.
And there's a link to that ballroom as well with it.
Yeah.
Because he reckons it's fully, and people are going, where's the money coming from?
It's coming from suing his own government.
Well, this is what he's now said. He said he might use that money to pay for the ballroom. He's like, I thought the ballroom was already funded.
Yeah. How long do you think the government shutdown is going to last? I'm going to make a prediction. I think it's going to go on forever. I don't think it's going to end.
It has to end at some point because he can't pay the army.
Yeah.
How's he going to keep all the NATO? How's he going to keep bombing Venezuelan ships if he ain't got a navy?
Well, he still.
Where's
will
the
have
National
some
Guard?
diehards.
How can he keep sending the National Guard into Democrat cities if he can't pay them?
Well, yeah. But then you got the diehards who'll do it for free. He didn't pay the people who invaded the American Parliament building in 2011.
No, this is true, but they weren't very organised either, were they? They killed a couple of coppers and posed for photos.
Tasered a cop.
Yeah.
Seen the footage.
One died. At least one died. Was it one or two?
Because they killed themselves afterwards. 9 people died as a result. $3 million worth of damage, and they've all been let off. Tortured a cop on live stream.
But don't worry, because the scales of justice need to be balanced. So he's going after innocent people now.
Yes, take that, innocent people doing nothing wrong, and he's let George Santos off the hook, and that other Binance guy, and
that fat sheriff.
He's gonna let Ghislaine Maxwell, that paedophile. He's gonna let her out.
Well, as soon as I think he's waiting on that one. I mean, she's already been moved to more comfortable digs.
Yes, for not saying anything.
Or for backing Trump.
That's real true love, though, isn't it? Finishing each other's sentences. Okay, I'm going to get going. So see you 9:30 tonight, or I might see you in the chat tomorrow on Phil's channel. And until then, thank you very much for watching. Thanks for the super chats. Really kind of you, really generous. Keep the channel alive. Thanks for the bants. Give us a like on the way out if you like. We always like a like on this channel. Or give us a dislike if you like. We don't care. It's all engagement. It's all good. And until next time, I'll say thank you so much for watching. Hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.